At 67, I had settled into a peaceful, comfortable life. My retirement suited me well, no more early mornings or deadlines. My small suburban home on the outskirts of Boston was a haven, filled with the simple pleasures of gardening, reading, and occasional dinners with friends and family. It was a life of quiet fulfillment. But everything changed the day my granddaughter Emily brought her boyfriend, Adam, to meet me. He was charming, polite, and honestly, quite handsome. At first, I thought little of it. I was just her grandmother, a distant figure in their young lives. But little did I know, this meeting would set in motion a chain of events that neither of us could have predicted. Emily had always been the light of my life. She was my only granddaughter, and we had always been close, even after she left for college. When she told me she was bringing someone special home to meet me, I was thrilled. I hadn't seen her in months, and I was eager to reconnect and meet the young man she was so fond of. When they arrived that afternoon, I was struck by how well they suited each other. Emily, with her bright smile and energetic nature, and Adam, tall, striking, and with a calm confidence that seemed to balance her perfectly. He had a way about him that immediately put me at ease. Polite, engaging, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. "Gran, this is Adam," Emily said with a wide smile as they entered my kitchen. He stepped forward, shaking my hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Lane. Emily talks about you often." I gestured for him to call me Rose, dispensing with formalities. I was happy she had finally introduced him to me. Over lunch, Adam effortlessly integrated into the conversation. He was articulate, humorous, and even asked insightful questions about my gardening project, something Emily had always shown only a mild interest in. It felt invigorating to have someone so genuinely invested in the details of my life. Over the following months, Emily and Adam visited often. I watched their relationship develop, and though I was happy for her, I couldn't help but notice something strange. There was a way Adam looked at me sometimes, subtle, yet persistent. At first, I dismissed it. Why would a 28-year-old man be interested in someone my age, someone much older than him? But the glances continued. The warmth of his smile lingered, and small moments, his hand brushing against mine when passing a dish, his proximity when speaking to me, left me unsettled. I began to feel an unanticipated connection, but it was difficult to understand. It was flattering to be noticed in such a way, but it also made me question what was happening. My husband had passed away over a decade ago, and I hadn't realized how much I missed feeling seen, feeling desired, until Adam's attention made me feel that way once more. One evening, Emily invited me to join her and Adam for dinner at their apartment in the city. I hesitated, feeling like a third wheel, but when I arrived, I was struck by their warmth and ease together. They laughed and joked as they prepared dinner, and while I initially felt like an outsider, Adam made a conscious effort to include me in their conversations, making me feel welcome. After dinner, Emily received an urgent work call and had to leave, leaving Adam and me alone for the first time. I should have felt awkward, but I didn't. We sat on the couch with glasses of wine, discussing his architectural work. I found myself enjoying our dialogue more than I expected. He was intellectually astute, empathetic, and surprisingly insightful for his age. The conversation naturally shifted to more personal topics, and I found myself opening up about the challenges I had faced after the passing of my late spouse. Adam listened intently, and for the first time in years, I felt understood. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted. We were sitting too close, and I could feel the tension building between us. Adam's gaze held mine, and for a moment, the room felt suspended in silence. "You're incredible, you know that?" he said, his voice soft but sincere. My heart raced. I knew this was inappropriate, but his words seemed to stir something in me, a part of me that had been dormant for so long. Before I could respond, his hand brushed mine, sending a spark through me. I was paralyzed, breathless, as he leaned in closer. We kissed. It was soft, tentative at first, but it quickly deepened, the tension we had both been avoiding suddenly breaking free. When we finally separated, I was overwhelmed by guilt. We couldn't continue this, I knew that. It was wrong, especially with Emily. But I couldn't deny how alive it made me feel. Adam and I tried to maintain normalcy when Emily was around, but the tension between us was impossible to ignore. Every time we were alone, the pull between us grew stronger. One afternoon, Emily asked me to pick up an item from their apartment while she was at work. I should have been more cautious, but I went. When I arrived, Adam greeted me with a smile and invited me in. I thought I would just grab the item and leave, but before I could, Adam was standing close to me, his hands on my shoulders, pulling me toward him. I hesitated, but then kissed him again, this time with a fierce urgency. The tension that had been building for weeks finally found release. I knew it was wrong, but in that moment, I didn't care. I wanted him. Over the following weeks, we continued our secret meetings whenever Emily was not around. The guilt was overwhelming, but the connection between us felt undeniable. Every time I saw Emily, I could barely look her in the eye without feeling sick. She had no idea what was happening behind her back. She was still in the dark about the betrayal that was unfolding. I tried to distance myself from Adam. I told him we couldn't continue like this. It wasn't fair to Emily. But each time I tried, he found a way to draw me back in. He told me that what we shared was more than physical, it was emotional, and he believed in it. I wanted to believe him, but I knew it couldn't last. And one night, when Emily came home earlier than expected, everything unraveled. She walked into the kitchen and saw us. The shock on her face, the confusion, the betrayal, it was all written across her expression. "What is happening here?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Emily stood frozen, her face pale as she took in the scene. Her eyes flicked between Adam and me, and I could feel the tension building, my heart racing. I tried to speak, to explain, but no words came. How could I explain what had happened? How could I possibly justify it? The guilt was overwhelming, and I could see the hurt in her eyes as it quickly turned to anger. "Explain what?" she asked, her voice trembling with disbelief. "How could you do this to me, Grandma?" Her voice cracked under the weight of her pain, and I could only stand there, speechless, feeling the immense regret flooding through me. Adam stepped forward, trying to calm her down, but she waved him off. "No, don't. I don't need you to explain. I can see exactly what's going on." Her words stung, and I felt like I was being torn apart. She was right. I had betrayed her trust in the worst possible way, and there was no way to undo it. The room was filled with the silence of unspoken pain as Emily looked at us, her face a mix of shock, confusion, and fury. She didn't wait for an explanation. She grabbed her keys and stormed out, leaving us behind in the deafening quiet. I wanted to go after her, to beg her to understand, but deep down, I knew there was no fixing it. Not immediately, at least. There was nothing I could say that would take away the hurt I had caused. Adam turned to me, his face pale. "We need to fix this, Rose," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. I shook my head. "We can't fix this, Adam. Not like this." The weight of the moment settled over us like a blanket. There was no going back. That night, I lay awake, replaying everything in my mind. The way Emily had looked at me, the pain in her eyes, it was etched into my soul. I had lost my granddaughter, someone I had raised and loved, and it was my fault. In the morning, Adam tried to reassure me. "We'll talk to her. Give her some time. She'll come around," he said, though I could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "I don't think so, Adam," I replied quietly. "She won't forgive us. Not this time." Adam and I barely spoke after that. He tried reaching out to Emily, but she didn't respond. And I tried, too. But each message, each call, was met with silence. The gulf between us grew, and I felt the sting of what I had lost, my relationship with Emily, my sense of who I was, shattered. Days passed, and still no word. I left her messages, begging her to talk to me, to at least give me a chance to explain. But she didn't reply. I knew she was hurting, but I also knew I had done something that would take a long time to heal. One afternoon, unable to take the silence any longer, I decided to visit her apartment. My heart was pounding as I knocked on the door, hoping she would at least let me speak to her. She opened the door just a crack, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. "Emily, please," I whispered, reaching out, but she held up her hand to stop me. "Just don't, Grandma," she said, her voice cold and distant. I felt a lump rise in my throat. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I never meant to hurt you," I said, but she cut me off. "You destroyed everything," she replied, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "You're my grandmother. How could you do this?" Tears filled my eyes as I tried to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I knew the damage had been done. She shook her head, her eyes full of pain, and quietly said, "I need time." She didn't slam the door in my face, but she didn't let me inside either. That small bit of hope, her need for time, was all I had left. Maybe, just maybe, one day we could fix this. But I knew it wouldn't be easy. It would take time, perhaps more time than I had left. But I was willing to wait. In the months that followed, Adam and I stopped seeing each other. The affair ended as abruptly as it had started. The excitement, the rush of the secret, faded into guilt and regret. I understood now that it was a mistake, a fleeting escape from loneliness, but nothing more. I spent the next year trying to rebuild my life, though it felt impossible. Every time I saw a picture of Emily or thought about her, the pain came rushing back. But slowly, I started finding new ways to live, volunteering, gardening, doing things that allowed me to move forward, even if only a little bit at a time. After almost a year of silence, Emily and I started talking again. It was slow, cautious, but there was a flicker of hope. We met for coffee a few times, and though things weren't the same, I could see the flicker of the connection we once had. It wasn't gone completely. I had learned a lot in the time since everything fell apart. I had learned that desire can cloud judgment, that at any age, mistakes can have life-altering consequences. I learned that forgiveness takes time, both forgiving others and forgiving yourself. As for Adam, I haven't spoken to him in months. He moved on, as I knew he would. And while I don't regret the moments we shared, I now understand they were just a temporary escape from my loneliness. I still think about him sometimes, late at night, but I know that those memories belong in the past. My future must be built on something stronger than fleeting desires. Life doesn't always go the way you expect, but you learn, you grow, and you find your way back to the people who matter most.